and the anxiety and the uncertainty. There is so much of that taking place right now. Personally, I'm in Lagos, and there has been, like zero movement for myself and my family for like over 5 weeks now. So we've been at home in each other's faces, and parenting is much more challenging now than ever, okay, which is one of the things that really inspired this series, because every day is Saturday, guys. Do you remember when we used to go to work from Monday to Friday, and the teachers in school, kept our children busy with education and all that stuff? And Saturdays, we get to spend the whole day with our kids. And then Sunday, those of us that go to church, the Sunday school teachers help keep our children for half the day. And then we're back home for like half day. Well, our new reality is that every day is Saturday. So we get to parent, teach, guide, correct, and protect, provide for, and cater for the needs of our children 24 hours every day of the week. And it's the 6th week for us in Lagos, because my children's school shut down like first week of March. So it's been really, really challenging, and a time for us to like step up, learn more, do more, and so on. So last week we talked about building a healthy relationship with your child. And one of the things you have to do is to have a good communication with that child for a good relationship to be developed and sustained. So today we're talking about good parent-child communication. And some of these things I'm going to be sharing are actually things I have learned and practiced, and it has helped me. And so I'm going to be sharing some of these tips with you today. So I'm not talking of a textbook. I'm actually sharing some of the things that has worked for me. So please don't leave, okay? Don't get tired of hearing my voice. Don't leave. Stick around and learn some of these steps. So communication is something that I think, if I were to ask how many of us have done a course on communication, I think most of us watching this broadcast have either done an online course or a training on leadership, on communication. And we all understand that communication is passing across message from one person to the other. It goes from the sender to the receiver, and you allow the receiver to process the message or information, and the receiver gives feedback. And it is said that if there is no feedback, communication is incomplete. So in short, if you communicate with your child and you don't allow the child to assimilate and understand and give you feedback, then that communication is ineffective, because you're not sure that the child has gotten the message you're trying to pass across, right? So you're not sure you're going to get the child to cooperate with you and to, adhere or obey the instruction that you have just issued out, which is most times what we do, parents. Okay, so but communication has to be beyond issuing out instructions. It has to go beyond that. I mean, it has to be a strategy we use to develop a relationship with our child. Okay, so today we're going to address open, effective, and positive communication. Because if communication is not open and effective or positive, then the child is most likely not gonna respond positively. And I know that for us, most parents, we really want our children to respond to us positively, and we want our children to cooperate with us. So we really want that communication to be effective, meaning whatever message I'm communicating to my child, I would want my child to understand that message, and I would want my child to adhere or do whatever it is that I would want to see happening, whether at home or in school and so on. So once again, I want to to welcome you. Welcome, Elizabeth. Welcome, Salamatu. Welcome, Moses. Welcome, Ayo, Lukman. Thank you guys for joining me today. And we're talking about parent-child communication. Please stick with me. I know sometimes we get frustrated watching a live broadcast because we have so many things to get back to, but please, I assure you, you're going to learn one or two things today because this tips has worked for me, guys. So before we dive into the ways, positive and effective ways you could communicate with your child, how about we talk about why it is important for us to talk to our children in a positive way, in an open way, and to ensure that our communication is effective. This is important because it has a direct bearing on the self-esteem and the value that your child would grow to attach to himself or herself, right? Because we say in Parenting Beyond Words that we want parenting to be more than what we say. We actually want to become what we want to see our children become. You want your child to be a responsible adult. You want your child to be attentive, respectful, honest, open. You have to be that thing. So I've come to learn that for me to be able to have a child that communicates effectively, I have to learn to be an effective communicator, okay? This is because communicating negatively would impact on the self-esteem of my child. So there's a way I could respond to my child, that can make my child feel unimportant or feel less important or feel that there isn't much value attached to him or her. So generally, I just want us to establish the fact that positive communication, effective communication, open communication, guys, has to be the way to go as a parent, because it would impact on your child's self-esteem, it will impact on the value and the respect they place on themselves, and it will teach them to practice effective communication even as they transition from childhood to adulthood. So, are you wondering why your child screams and yells at other children? Take a look at yourself as a parent, guys. Are you wondering why your child just issues out instructions or bullies other children, or sometimes even talks to you rudely? Take a look at the example you have laid out for your child, or other adults that are living with you or have influence on the life of your child. How are they communicating? Because children tend to do what they see. I keep saying that, and it would not stop, guys. They would always do what they see as against what we tell them to do. Okay, so I'll give you a very funny short story. It's very, very funny. So I always tell my girls, don't eat food that falls out of the plate, right? But have you caught yourself sometimes as a parent, like feeling like you're immune to some of the things you tell your children not to do? Like, if a child cannot eat a piece of macaroni that falls out of the plate on the tray or on the table, I feel sometimes like my immune system is much more boosted and built up. Maybe if I eat that piece of macaroni, I wouldn't get as hot as they would. And one day, honestly, I caught this thing playing out physically. So I was feeding my girls. They were way younger than they are right now because they feed themselves now, And a piece of macaroni fell off the plate. And I saw myself pick, because pasta is my best meal, right? Like spaghetti, macaroni, anything pasta I like. And Indomie too. Yes, I like Indomie. Okay, so I picked up that piece of macaroni and I put it in my mouth. Guys, yes, I've been there. And my daughter went, "Mom, but you said it's not good, it's not healthy to eat from the tray." And I'm like, oh God, But guys, she did not tell me that until she did it herself. I picked it up, ate it. The next macaroni that fell out of the tray, my daughter picked up and put in her mouth. And when I went, "Why? But I told you it's wrong. Why should you put macaroni out of the tray in your mouth?" And she was like, "I saw you do it. You did it." And I have been saying it for so long. I have been saying it for so long, guys. Children will always do what they see us do and not necessarily what we tell them. So, this is how parenting beyond words came up. We have to become what we want to see our children, right? So, effective, positive communication has to be your choice every day. And parents, honestly, this is a choice you make every day. It's like you can't just tell yourself, oh, I'm going to communicate positively and effectively every day, and then it works for you every day. There are days that are really, really bad, I must tell you. There are days that you are tired, you are weak, you are fagged out, and especially with this lockdown, a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainties and concerns, guys. Honestly, you can find yourself. I must tell you, I've found myself there. And that's why I really respect single parents, guys. Because at times like this, I defer to my husband. When I get tired, when I feel like screaming and shouting and communicating negatively, I signal him and he can get the message, and I take time off, right? I take time off to cool down, calm down, because I really don't want to communicate negatively, because it's going to stick with the child. And that child is going to learn. And for you to help that child unlearn negative communication is going to take a while. It will be tantrums, guys. It's going to be bullying the sibling. It's going to be shouting. It's going to be kicking, being unkind, and so on. You can never know how far negative communication would go in affecting your child, right? So this is why it's important for us parents to keep reminding ourselves every day, I have to communicate positively. Another reason why you need to communicate positively is because it will make your child feel respected. And the more respected your child feel, the more accepted they feel. Respect? You mean I have to respect my child? I see your shock, guys. I know. The first time I realized that a parent has to respect their child to be able to help the child have a healthy self-esteem, it was very difficult for me to accept. Because, guys, you know how we were raised. It was all about the authoritative, the parents are the authority. You just clamp down on a child when a child disobeys or fails to adhere to instruction, and there is no room for any chit chat, right? That's how we were raised. It's all obey the instruction, and we don't even want questions about why. Why shouldn't I have to eat on a bed? Why should I make my bed when I wake up from the bed? And so on, right? You had no room to question parenting when we were growing up. But times have changed. Times have changed, and we don't want to lose these children to all the negative and unhealthy messaging that's going on out there. So we want to keep communicating with our children. We want to keep building positive relationship with our children, because we want to still have them when they become teenagers. We want to be that person. The parents should be that go-to person that they go to when they are confused, they are tempted, pressured by peers to do what is wrong. Yes, you still want to be that go-to person. That's why it's important for us to keep effective communication. So, respect your child. Don't shame your child, right? Don't shame your child. You do things like giggle, laugh at a child when they do certain things. Honestly, children are very sensitive. Children are very sensitive. They are sensitive, and they pick on negative vibes, guys. They pick on negative vibes. My 4-year-old daughter can call you out on it. I mean, like Zoe, she will call you out on it, because she knows when you're being sarcastic. She knows when you're being insensitive, and she can tell it. She can get so hurt. And I assure you, it's the same for every child. It's easy for the child to be hurt. It's easy for the child to feel bad. And guys, we need to stop it. So those little statements you make that makes your child feel disrespected, makes them feel shame, we need to stop it, right? So that feeling of being heard and understood is something you need to establish. And you can only achieve that with effective, open, and positive communication. If your child feels misunderstood, they will tend towards negative and unhealthy behaviors, risky behaviors, because it's going to be all about my parents don't understand me, my parents don't love me, my parents don't accept me as I am, and the child will never be vulnerable to you. So you want a child that will be vulnerable with you. You want a child that will run to you when they are going through challenges. You want a child that will come to you when their peers are pressuring them to do something negative. Guys, you need to ensure that you make your child know that they are understood, right? So you don't want your child to feel unimportant. You don't want them to feel unheard. You don't want them to feel misunderstood. That child feeling important, understood, and heard is the way to go, because that equates to a child that feels loved, accepted, heard, and with a healthy self-esteem. And it is that child that you want to raise. Because I know if I ask any of you watching this, like, what do you desire for your child? I know most of us will say, I want my child to grow up to be a responsible, well-adjusted adult, and all the good things that every parent wants for their child. So the first thing to start, guys, the work lies with us, parents. The work lies with us. Because who else knows our children as much as we do, right? Who else spends as much time as we do with our children, especially at this lockdown period, guys? We will either create monsters or bring out healthy human beings that will hold our society in the future. So what you do goes a long way in affecting the adulthood of your child, affecting the society and the nation at large, right? So this is why the child will come up with reasons why they will not cooperate with you. The child will come up with reasons why they will disobey every instruction. The child will be rebellious, the child will be disobedient, because that child feels misunderstood, feels unheard, and feels unimportant. So you want your child to cooperate with you. The child is more likely to cooperate with you, more likely to obey instructions, more likely to adhere to instructions. In fact, more likely to become a role model to other children if you communicate with that child openly, effectively, and positively. So this means listening to the child. This means doing all the other tips we're going to be talking about shortly. So let's dive in, guys. We're going to be talking about 5 steps you need to take. So this class or session is all about practical steps, okay? Practical steps that have worked for me, that I'm sure you will work for you. Like, the least success you can record is you create a comfortable climate or a very, very healthy environment, and guys, in parenting, that is an achievement. That is an achievement. If you create a rapport with your child where your child feels, I can talk to my mom anytime, I can talk to my dad any day, that is a huge achievement. I mean, if every other thing in parenting goes south or goes bad, but you achieve this one thing, honestly, I promise you, this is huge. Because this is the bedrock of every future conversation. This is what will determine whether your child will, get into a risky behavior pattern or not. This is what will determine whether your child will come to you with questions, concerns, and requests for guidance and advice or not. This is what will determine whether your child will shut down or not. So first thing is start early. Start communicating with your child early. You know that research has shown that it's never too early to start communicating with your child. In fact, it's been discovered that babies who are in the womb get to recognize the voices of their parents if the father or the mother make a habit of talking to the baby while they are in the womb. So when the child is born and the child hears that voice, the child will respond to that voice. Yeah, that's what science is showing, okay? So you find that that's why sometimes fathers tend to feel like the child is bonding more with the mother it's because maybe the mother gets to communicate with the child a lot of times while she's pregnant. But I have seen fathers who made that commitment, talk to their children while they were in the womb at least once a day. And when the child came to the world, when the father is talking, the child's face would turn towards that voice because that child has gotten used to that voice. So it's never too early to start communicating, guys. Never too early. So if you have a teenager or you're raising teenagers and this sounds like, oh, but I already have teenagers and I did not start communicating with them well, we don't have that communication rapport, we don't have the right climate, we have not set the atmosphere right for talking to each other, it is never too late to start. The best way to go with teenagers is just let them know you love them. Let them know you accept them however they are. You know, when children become teenagers, they begin to take on roles, they begin to take on shapes, they begin to decide on their identity. It may not turn out the way you wanted it to look. You need to show your child that I love you just as you are. I love you however you have decided to look. I love you whatever voice you choose to use. Okay, so that really works with teenagers, showing them that you love them just as they are and that you are there for them. Okay, and then any little opportunity you have, create a conversation around it. They might ask you a simple question or use another child as a scenario to talk to you about a certain issue. Please use that opportunity to talk to your child. Okay, so talking about starting early, the first thing you want to do is you want to build the comfort zone or a comfort level. So you want to start with small talks with your child, right? Talk about little things like your child goes to school and comes back. You can ask the child about school. How was school today? What happened today? Or you go to work and come back. The child was left at home. You ask the child, how did you spend your day today? What did you do today? Creating a comfort level, making the child feel you could talk to me about anything. We could talk about anything really. And it doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter how irrelevant or childish or whatever it is. I will listen to you and I will pay attention to you. So that is what you do in building a comfort level, ensuring that the child knows that you are available to answer their questions, you're available to talk with them, you're available to listen to them, right? You also want to create that climate of open, effective communication, right? So it has to be like every time your child wants to talk, even if you're busy, make sure you get back to that child and make sure that that talk takes place. You also want to show the child that you love them, so creating the climate is all about. So show them. You need to show your child that you love them. How do you show your child you love them? You could hug them, you could tell them with words. So of course we know that communication is both verbal and non-verbal. So you could tell them or you could show them with your gestures. A hug, linger for 1 extra minute while hugging them. Please don't do too much of that with teenagers because teenagers sometimes get embarrassed when hugged in public. Okay, so you have to show your child that you love and accept them. And when they do something good, no matter how little it is, please praise them. Offer some praises, guys. So my daughters recently started, they make my bed now. They come into my bed and they just stretch it for me and they fold the blanket and they put the pillows where they belong. And I really take time to really appreciate them and I show them that this is unique, guys. This is something that I really appreciate. It might be something as little as your child clearing the table or cleaning after themselves. Yeah, these are things they should do for themselves, but take note of those things. Take note of those things. Offer them praises. Give them some extra privileges, right? If they wanted a drink, you could accompany it with something else. If they were not supposed to have a drink, a Capri Sun or a bottle of soft drink or something, you could allow them to do it once in a while, right? As much as it's healthy for them, because they need to see it in action. You don't just say to a child, I love you, I accept you, be vulnerable with me. You have to show that child, okay? So that child will become open. That child will get to a zone of talking about their feelings, talking about their concerns, talking about the issues that really bother them. But your reaction to those talks, about feelings and concerns, will determine whether the child will continue to communicate or not. So if a child comes to you and says something like, I feel like I'm not respected in this house, and then you shut the child down and you're like, who are you, my friend? Are you the child or the parent in this house? Who told you that you should be respected? You just do what I say. Or you give an instruction and the child says why, and you're like, because I said so. And that's always your response, because I said so. Now, that child will not be able to communicate. Your child is not going to tell you about their feelings. They're not going to tell you about their concerns, because honestly, guys, there's no human being that wants to feel that irrelevant and unwanted and rejected, especially children. They are very, very sensitive beings. So something as simple as rolling your eyes, it may not be at them. They could catch something from that. They just feel mom is communicating something, dad is communicating something, and it might be the negative vibe. Now, some of these things I'm saying might scare someone, and the person might feel, oh my God, what do I do? So I can't even lift my finger. It might affect my child in one negative or positive way or the other. Yes. But that's the beauty of parenting. Parenting is all about making mistakes and correcting it. And the more you practice, the better you become, okay? So no threats, guys. No pressure. No stress, okay? If I make a mistake, I just pick myself up, I dust it off, and I learn the positive thing to do. And I try again another time. And that's the beautiful thing about children. They forgive easily. I may yell, I may shout, I might treat them unkind. I call them and I apologize. And I'm like, guys, I was really tired and I should have taken time out. So next time, this is what I will do. Let me tell you something. I am so on my girls about wearing slippers. Is there any parent in the house that is really having a tough time teaching their child how to use slippers to walk around? Please, I need you to write something in the comment. I need to know that I am not alone in this, guys. Somebody tell me, just an emoji with a hand, show of hand, would help me know that I'm not alone in this, guys. So my daughters find it really difficult to wear slippers. They just prefer to walk barefooted. And by night, when they go to sleep, be sure, no matter how much we sweep the floor and mop the floor, their feet are black. And I make it a point of duty to show them and say, guys, this is what happens when you don't walk with slippers. So one day I walk out of my room without slippers. And fortunately for them, they were all putting on their slippers. And they all go, yeah, mommy, what are you doing out of your room without slippers? And my younger daughter Zoe says, Michaela, don't worry, leave mom. She's an adult. She can do whatever she likes. And I'm like, what? That was like a red flag. And everything in my head went ding, 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 ding. Wrong button. My daughter felt that an adult could do whatever they want. I can imagine she was looking forward to becoming an adult. Because that meant she get to disobey the rules. And that was a teachable moment. I had to recognize it, right? So it was a feeling or an understanding that she expressed. And I knew that I needed to communicate something immediately. And I just froze and I told them, guys, this is totally wrong. I am completely in the wrong. I should be wearing my slippers. This is wrong. And I apologize. I'm so sorry for not wearing my slippers. Please, can you give me 1 minute? And I went back into my room. I put on my slippers. We're still on the issue, guys. We're still on the issue, right? So, but I made sure I apologized immediately. I let them know I was wrong. And I explained to them that, in fact, you become more responsible when you're an adult. You don't become irresponsible, right? So we're talking about feelings, how that communicating with your child effectively and positively could help your child communicate thoughts, feelings, concerns to you. The more you talk about these things, the more they come to you. And one day it's going to pay off, right? Your child is going to walk up to you and tell you about that person who would have abused them, God forbid, or that person who would have made them smoke. God forbid, right? We keep saying God forbid to these things, but it could happen. Our children are going to meet people in school, they're going to meet people in church or in mosque, they're going to meet people on the playground or wherever they go to mingle and socialize, and people would want to impact on them positively or negatively. Now, it is the little things you do now that will build up that rapport where your child could call you and say, Mom, guess what? I just got invited for a party and there are going to be boys, there's going to be alcohol. And that's when you get an opportunity to guide your child, guys. You get an opportunity. So it pays off eventually. This hard work of creating the climate, building the atmosphere for communication, building a rapport, it pays off eventually. Please don't get tired. We're going to move on to the second point very soon. So finally, I want us to talk about showing your child that you accept them, offer praises, and be careful what you say to your child. So for instance, your child comes to you and they're like, Mom, I want to say something to you. And you're like, don't disturb me now, I'm busy. Children are very sensitive. I think this is the fourth time I'm saying this since the beginning of this session, right? Please remember, our children are sensitive. So the way you respond to them, the things you say to them, can either affect them positively or negatively. This is why open, positive, and effective communication is very important. So use your verbal communication, use your non-verbal cues to please show your children that you love them. Show them that you love them, you accept them. They can be vulnerable with you, right? They can be vulnerable with you, and that they can talk to you, and that whatever happens, it's not the end of the world, right? So there's this talk about how we parents need to make our children understand that failure and mistakes should be stepping stones instead of obstacles. So your reaction to your child about their mistakes or their failures would really make the child feel comfortable around you, okay? So this is really important, guys, about the first step. So the second step is we need to communicate with our children at their levels. Come down to their levels. So this is at two levels. First of all, if your child is standing and your child is talking to you, you need to stand up. Be with that child at that level. If your child is talking to you and your child is seated, sit with the child. Or if you're seated on the chair and the child decides to sit on the floor, you could decide to sit on the floor. Come to the level of the child, even physically, to ensure that the child knows that there is a rapport. They can talk to you. Okay? So apart from that, we need to communicate to our children at their level when it comes to the words we use, the messages we pass across. Of course, we have to remember that there are age-appropriate messages, right? It's not every message that is meant for your child at the stage and age where they're at. So you really need to be careful what you tell your child so that it's not too much information for that age and stage, so that it's just enough information that they can process and understand and assimilate, because the brain develops in different stages. So if you give them too much information, it will rather get them confused than resolve the issue. So always make sure that you talk to your child, communicate with your child at their level. Tip number 3 is learn how to really listen. Last week, guys, we made a commitment to listen, right? You remember? How many of you were together with me on this session? We made a commitment to listen to our children, and I promised you that we're going to talk in details about active listening. So this is it. Listening is a huge part of communication, right? Remember when we defined communication? You send a message, the receiver receives it, and the receiver communicates back. So if you don't listen, then communication is not complete. if you don't listen to the feedback, you don't listen to the concerns, the feelings of your child, communication is not complete, right? So for you to actively listen, it means you have to maintain eye contact. Yeah. Where's my camera? So how do I maintain eye contact? That's a question you need to ask yourself. I need to maintain eye contact with my child. They're talking to me, I need to look at them in the eye. But with boys, when they get to a certain age, you need to reduce the eye contact. I don't know, all the men in the house, can you remember growing up how uncomfortable you felt, especially when your mom was talking to you and looking into your eyes? Right? Okay, so for boys, when they get to like between 7 and 12, they become a bit uncomfortable with the eye contact. So one of the best places for a conversation could be while you're sitting in a car driving your child to school, right? Anything you want them to tell you, they could tell you at that point, because you're listening, you're paying attention, but you're not peering down at them like too much eyes, right? So, but girls like a lot of eye contact, you know, I noticed that because they tend to feel that, okay, we're connecting. Yeah, you're listening. I know you're listening. And it doesn't make them feel uncomfortable, especially if they are used to it. Okay, so please maintain eye contact, right? And appropriate touch as well. That's active listening. You pat the child, you hug the child when necessary, you make the child know that you are listening without interrupting. That's the next thing. Listen with your mouth closed. Hey, parents. Listen with your mouth closed, right? So little exclamations like, yeah, I understand, go ahead, continue, I can hear you, oh yeah, I know what you feel, right? But without doing it too much. It's good for communication. It helps your child to continue telling you things that they're about to tell you, especially if it's a sensitive topic, right? If a child is talking to you about something like maybe an abuse or maybe something really sensitive that is important to them, right? You don't want to do it too much because you don't want the child to like lose confidence or change their minds, you know, because that's really a unique situation. So it's important to listen with your mouth closed. And finally, guys, you have to make your child feel heard. So maybe your child has talked to you about a certain thing, like they don't want to wear a particular clothing. You can change your mind, please, about that piece of clothing. Let them have that, okay? Or something that there isn't much at stake for them to maybe stop doing or do more. You could just do something to make them know that I heard you. That will help the child come back to you, right? That would really encourage your daughter or your son to come back to you with discussions and questions and talks, because they know that you heard them and that you take action. So you don't just listen and not take action. In active listening, that's where the active part comes in, right? Eye contact, appropriate touch, eliminate distractions, right? Drop the phone, close the laptop, drop the newspaper, put off the gas if you're cooking, if it will not spoil your cooking, if need be, right? You're doing something and it can wait and your child wants to communicate, you can stop. That is a dramatic way of showing your child you matter. You are important. I love you. I want to listen to you. That's so huge. It's important. Okay, so these are little things you can do, but this is huge. Active listening is a huge part of communication. And if you don't do this, then it's going to be a one-way dialogue, guys. You're going to be issuing out instructions and you're just going to be talking, and it's going to be like you like hearing the sound of your voice, because nobody's going to talk to you back because you don't listen. So please, parents, we need to listen. Point number 4 is we need to keep our conversations brief. Okay, and I'm beginning to feel like this conversation is becoming long. So yeah, I'm about to keep it brief. Right? So hi guys, thank you for joining us. Sarah, Zainab, I see you. Maureen, I see you. Alheri, I see you. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. This is Parenting Beyond Words series, and we're talking about parent-child communication, okay? So we talked about how you need to communicate with your child positively, effectively, and in an open manner so that your child can learn to communicate effectively as well from you as they watch you do it, so that your child can have healthy self-esteem, so that your child can feel comfortable, loved, accepted, understood, heard, and that they can be vulnerable with you. So far, we talked about 4 steps to take in having a good communication with your child, which is a huge part of developing relationship with your children, right? Okay, so we talked about starting early, communicating with your child early, which means you need to create the atmosphere, the climate, and then you need to also make sure that you talk to your children at their level. You learn how to listen actively. You learn how to keep the conversations brief, which was the point we were talking about before you joined us. So, brief conversations, okay? So, keep your questions simple. Answer questions with simple words, simple phrases. Make sure that whatever you say is short, the message is short, right? So, and it also depends on the age and the stage of your child, right? So, for children who are toddlers, if the conversation used to take a while, when the child is getting to a stage where they are becoming more curious and interested in exploring the world, you want to keep your messages not too long, because you may lose the child's attention before you finish passing across the message. So you need to keep your conversations brief and simple, okay? So for instance, when you have a conversation with your child about maybe closing the door, right? I want you to always keep doors closed. If you're in Lagos, you know the importance of this one. If not, mosquitoes will take advantage of you and your family, right? So keep doors closed might be the instruction. And you've had that conversation with your child where you've explained to the child why it's important to keep doors closed. So if a child walks in and does not close the door, you don't have to go, hey, do I have to break your head? Or this, a long conversation. I gave this example last week, and I said you could simply say, Michaela, the door. Call the name of the child and mention the thing, right? And because there has been a prior conversation, keep this one short, and the child will get the message and they will get the door. So really, are you all about the drama and the yelling and the anger and all that, scaring your child, intimidating your child? Or do you basically, bottom line is, you want them to cooperate with you, understand the need, and also grow to use these things as principles and way of life? So you need to show it by example. And this is the bane of our parenting beyond words, which is more about becoming that thing you want your child to become. You want your child to be responsible, honest. You want your child to communicate effectively. You need to do the same, right? And the final tip for us today before we close is ask questions. My rule is the first thing I do when my child asks me a question is I ask them why they're asking me the question. Because it helps you get to the bottom of the issue, and sometimes it might be something deeper than what you know. But asking a question would help you understand why your child is asking you that question, right? So it's really important for you to ask questions, but keep the questions simple and make sure you provide explanations that will help resolve issues for your child. So this brings us to the end of the first part of parent-child communication. Next week, I'm going to share with you the other 4 or 5 tips in effective, open, and positive communication. So it's time to answer questions. Anybody has a question about communication, about relationship? Hi, Papa. Thank you, Pastor Shola. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. So we're rounding up. We talked about parent-child communication today, and we mentioned that it's important for you to start communicating with your child early. It's important for you to keep the conversation at the level of your child. Sit down at that level with your child. If they're sitting on the floor, join them on the floor. If they're standing, stand with them, and also keep the conversation simple so that the child can assimilate. We also talked about active listening, eliminating distractions, talking to your child with eye contact, maintaining eye contact, and appropriate touch. We talked about ensuring that your child knows that they are heard. Take action. After you listen to your child, take action. Do something to show your child that you have heard them. And finally, we said you need to keep the conversations brief and ask questions. Now it's time for you to ask me questions. So, is there any question about parenting? It could be any question, really. It doesn't have to be about communication or relationship development with your child. It can be anything about communication or relationship or discipline or any other topic about parenting. So I'm going to give you a minute to type in a question. While we wait for you to type your question, we're going to make our commitment. So today, our commitment is to make sure that we maintain eye contact with our children and we listen with our mouths closed. There's time for everything. That time when your child is talking to you and being vulnerable with you and trying to open up and build a rapport in communication is not the time for you to show them that you know better or I told you so, right? It is the time for you to let them know that they can be vulnerable with you without being judged, okay? So our commitment today, which I would want every one of you to write in the comment, is I, Ruth Haruna, commit to listen to my children and make eye contact with a closed mouth, right? So I will listen to my children, make eye contact with a closed mouth. Please write it in the comments. Let me see it. Hi, Dorcas. How's Elian doing? Say hi to him. All right, let me see your commitment, guys. If there are no questions, type your commitment in the comments and let me see it. I commit to listen with a closed mouth. I commit to make eye contact with my children as I listen to them. Thank you so much. And I hope that God continues to give us grace and strength for this season of waiting and praying and trusting, and that we will end up building up our children into responsible adults and not frustrating them in this time, okay? Thank you so much. Yeah, okay. So there is a comment. I'm gonna read it. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. So there is a trending issue about a father whose son didn't do well in a $21,000 per annum school, and the father was seen assaulting his son. How should he have dealt with such? So thank you so much, Papa. Thank you for this question. So honestly, I talked about asking questions, right? I think the first thing the father should have done was to ask the child a simple question. Why? Right? So if a child is not doing well in school, there is something going on. So the thing about children, no matter their age, right? No matter their age, whether they are teenagers or, I think basically about human beings actually, there is always something deeper going on down there, deeper than the surface thing. So that is just a symptom to an issue. So the best thing for a father to do is to try and find the root cause of that issue. Okay, so being violent and, you know, beating up the child or being angry and staying away from the child does not solve the problem. You remember somewhere in the middle of this conversation, I asked you parents, what is the goal of your parenting? What do you really want to achieve? So for this father, he needs to remind himself that what I want to achieve is really to raise a responsible adult. I want to raise a responsible adult that will be functional in the society and give back to the society. And for that to happen, I need to even be sure that this child is interested in whatever it is I have enrolled this child to do. So there are questions around, is the child interested in the course they are studying? If not, what can we do about that? Does the child have other interests? Can the child drop some courses the child is doing that are not compulsory and pick up other courses that are important to him or her? Okay, so the father also needs to ask the question around, how has the communication line been, or the rapport between the father and the child? And this reaction evidently shows that it has always been a one-way thing. It's always about what I say as a father. It's always about the child obeying my instruction, and that's the most important thing. You remember last week we talked about building up relationship with your children, and we said for you to have a relationship with your child, that child needs to know that it's not all about what I say. It's not all about what I want as a parent. And we talked about toning down and dialing down the yelling, the shouting, the violence, the flogging, the beating, the drama, and the anger. A lot of this anger are unresolved anger from our own childhood as parents, or our past, or even our work, or whatever stress we're going through as human beings. So the first thing I would say is that reaction is totally wrong, because it further drives the child away, and that father would never understand why this child is behaving the way he is. So solution would be ask questions, try and build a rapport between you and your child. Let the child understand the reason behind the instruction. Sometimes when I say explain to the child the reason behind an instruction, parents are like, do I need to explain to my child why I'm saying don't do this or don't do that? Okay, it helps, especially when your child is no longer a toddler or in middle age, or in their tween age, and now they are about to transition into adulthood. The stakes are high. So yes, you need to have a mature conversation with your child to explain to the child why it is important for you to get a certificate, for instance, right? Because there are a lot of people that go to follow their passions, like, okay, music or football or something, and then, especially when it relates to sports, and then maybe they lose a part of their body and they can't participate in that sport again, and then they become frustrated, right? So parents always have good reasons why they insist a child should maybe get a certain education or in a certain institution and so on. But having a conversation around why will help the child cooperate with you more, because the child will see from where you're seeing. Sometimes we say the parent is the frontal lobe of the brain of the child, because you know that part of that brain does not completely get developed until the child is 20. So it is the part of the brain that processes consequences. So that child does not know the consequence of the action, fully know the consequence of that action. It is the responsibility of the parent to create an atmosphere, a climate, a comfort level where you can converse with your child, you can communicate with your child, and the child can understand from your perspective. So it's not about exerting authority, it's not about who is in charge, because that is the second question every child wants a parent to answer. Do you love me? And am I gonna always have my way? Yeah. So if you understand that if you go the violent way, you're gonna be at war with your child, then you will take the other route, which is more around creating a climate of communication, two-way communication, make the child understand, ask questions, and do so much more around showing the child that you love them and you accept them no matter what the situation is, right? So does anybody have a comment to make about this question? We're responding to a question about a child who was not doing so well in a school that was really expensive. The father was spending so much money and the child was not doing so well, and the father decided to molest the child, like physically beat the child. And we've been able to address this issue. But if there are more comments, you can write it and I will read it. If no, I'm gonna see if there's any other question. If there's no other question, we're going to bring this session to an end. This has been a really exciting and interesting question. And thank you, Pastor Shola Adesoye, for throwing in this question. It's really added some intrigue, to this conversation. So thank you once again. Thank you, Papa, for your support. Thank you once again for joining me. So it's parenting beyond words, and we say this means becoming that thing or that person you want to see your child become in the future. You want your child to be respectful, to be a responsible adult, to be patient, kind, and loving, and communicate effectively. You need to be that person. Your child needs to see you being that person. So beyond what you say, be that person. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to be back next week. See you soon. Thank you, guys. Bye. And thank you for joining me. Thank you. Bye.